We've all seen a satin stitch in our embroidery that looks like it was haphazardly outlined with one edge or another dotted with running stitches that were certainly not part of the overarching design. Though this can be intensely frustrating, it's easily explained and corrected if you know what to look for. This is handling escaped edge underlay. Now, it's commonly seen on edge run or contoured style underlay on satin stitch columns. You'll see this row of extraneous stitching that looks like a misplaced outline. It's usually an escaped underlay. Thing too here, I'm going to add some slides and we're going to go ahead and show you what's going on here. So this is what we're talking about with that escaped underlay. Uh, this is what it looks like, or contour underlay like this. It's when you have underlay that's not covered by the top stitching, it can kind of be out and proud and look like an outline that shouldn't really be there. So the problem is when we have an outline like that, it turns out that it usually is just underlay popping out. It's usually a problem with pull compensation or with the inset levels. So what you're usually looking at on materials or garments to shift easily where the underlay stitching isn't set back far enough from the edge, you can see this popping out as we see on this little metallic number 5 up here. There are two common problems that can lead to these escaped edge runs. If the finished satin stitch looks thinner than you intended, then usually that's something that you need to deal with the automatic pull compensation setting, right? Drawing or editing the shape, though lots of us will correct for pull and push compensation issues manually, drawing or editing the shape to make the satin stitch wider in this is unlikely to help with the issue. As you move the edge of the element, any automatic underlay will maintain the same distance from the finished edge as it did in the original. Problematic. So really, you can't just draw this out of it. You actually have to use the automatic setting. So the right call for a narrow column that has an exposed underlay like this is to start by measuring the width of the finished satin stitch and then adding that missing thickness. So if it's coming in and it's a half a millimeter too thin, you want to add that half a millimeter to your automatic pull compensation, and it's going to go ahead and broaden out that column while allowing that underlay to stay in place at the original distance or with increased distance at the original width that it was inside of there. Now, in the case that the shape is wide enough for the correct width, it really isn't the same issue altogether. If you're still encountering that escaped underlay after adjusting pull compensation, it'd be the same thing. So either we're wide enough or maybe we've done our adjustment, but even after the adjustment, we're still seeing that underlay popping out of the edge. Then the problem is with the inset or the margin. So what we want to do there then is use the inset or margin settings to tuck the underlay further under the top stitching. So you're going to see the inset or margin distance in your software. This number simply defines the distance between the edge of the drawn element and the underlay line. When you increase the inset of the underlay, you literally just tuck those lines deeper inside of the column further away from that edge. Now, the truth of the matter is many people are going to tell you just to tear it all out. Take out that underlay. Now, I would say, honestly, you should reconsider that because edge run and contour underlays, depending on what kind of material you're on, they shore up the edges, especially if you think of the outer curve of a satin stitch. The inner curve is always more dense. The outer curve is always more loose. So there's sawtoothing or other kinds of gaps that can appear. And the edge underlay being underneath that can kind of cover some of that color problem where we don't get that sawtoothing. And when we have textures, that edge of that underlay, it can hold on. The satin stitch will hold onto that edge instead of becoming jagged when we're on something that has texture or gaps. So it provides that edge reinforcing rail and it covers the background color. Removing it can reduce stitch quality. So I really do want you to consider that before you just tear it out. Think about tucking it in if you really need that loft, that support from underneath, or if you're trying to avoid some color coverage on the outside of a tight curve, or you're seeing rough edges or sawtoothing because of that pulling into different nooks and crannies on textured materials. So think about that before you just tear it out. Unless, and here is my one exception to the rule, if you are on 3D foam, especially on caps, I always remove edge run underlay on 3D designs with this symptom. When you see the little row of nodules of foam sticking out of the outside edge, many people think they're having a cleanup issue or they need to use heat. Though that can be true of little fibers of 3D foam, you can see elsewhere on this design that we're showing on screen that it is nice and clean, but we see that little round of lumps on the outside edge. That is an escaped underlay. Many digitizers try to cut foam using an edge run underlay before we do the top stitching. For my money, this is the thing that's caused people the most headaches, especially on things like stretcher caps that are likely to shift or buckle. Take out that underlay. The top stitching density is what's used to cut the foam. Remove the edge run because you will never see this kind of shifting, especially on hats, structured hats where they buckle, using that 3D foam. This row of lumpy stitches sticking out of the edge is the top problem I see with people having quality issues. So honestly, take it out there, tear it out every time. But ultimately, the tale of machine embroidery quality, it really has multiple factors that define it. It can be lots of different reasons that you have these kinds of issues. And what I would say is to make the best go of this, you really want to make sure that uh, you take into the account all of these different factors that you can. The tale of those factors are really only going to be told under the needle of your own machine. You have to test for yourself with your particular combination of garment, needle, machine, hoop, and design parameters. Test, pay attention, and do what makes sense for the distortion you see. You'll be glad you gave yourself the time to learn, and also, hey, forgive yourself when occasionally things don't go the way you plan. Be glad you did. All right, that's my secret sauce.